Okay, we are now recording this meeting, and I just want to go ahead and introduce my guest speaker, who is Dan Willis, and he had an experience with an interdimensional being in 1977 that conveyed the relationship between geometry and consciousness. This left him with a burning desire to further understand the connectedness of the science and geometry of the matrix to that of the mind. Afterwards, he sought out Dr. Marcel Vogel, IBM's head scientist in the early 1980s, who invited Dan to be one of his research associates. Another project Dan worked on was the DeLaWarr Camera that was imported from England. The camera could holographically project an energetic image and capture it on film, and could then tune that projection either forwards or backwards in time. The objective of the project was to bring the operational principles of this patented device into the technology of the 1980s in order to view the imagery projected in real time. Dan is also one of the Disclosure Project's top secret military witnesses who testified at the National Press Club in front of every major media news outlet in Washington, D.C. in 2001. This was a world disclosure event based on the hundreds of credible military and intelligence witnesses' testimonies, in which was asking for a congressional hearing in order to bring forth the scientists working within the Black Ops projects. These scientists could validate the claims regarding secret free energy technologies that exist in the world today. The goal was to help release information on the technologies that have been hidden for over 70 years that could offer a global energy solution to stop further damage to our planet. Instead, the disclosure message was sanitized by a controlled mainstream media. And as an ex-radio broadcast engineer and ABC newsman, Dan has taken a keen interest in how and why the mainstream media has withheld this disclosure from the public. And with all of that introduction, welcome Dan Willis to Connecting Consciousness, Georgia. We are so very happy to have you as our guest speaker tonight.
Ellen, it's my honor and pleasure to join everyone. And that introduction, did you write that? That's great. I mean,
I took
that covers everything, you know.
Took the information you sent me and I edited and tried to compress it because it was a lot of information, but it was.
Yeah, you did a great job on that. Yeah, that summed up a lot.
Well, I wanted to go ahead and start this meeting with your experience that you've had with Marcel Vogel, how this all came about, and the amazing journey of discovery that you had with working with him in his laboratory. And go ahead and take the floor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was interested ever since, I had a high-level top secret clearance in military communications, was getting secret classified reports of extraterrestrial craft coming out of the oceans, and it seeded my mind to what's going on with this. So long story short, 1977 was an unusual year that I had a number of ET experiences, and I guess I could do a quick share screen here. Anyway, I had this Kundalini opening experience, you could say, with a being that, I'm going to make this short because there's a lot of stuff to cover on this. This being projected in space a sphere. And as I observed the sphere, I noticed that one geometry went into another. It started with like a star tetrahedron and dodecahedron, isosahedron, it went into all these geometries, and it went into infinity, and then turned back into a sphere. At the time, I didn't even know what platonic solids were. I never took geometry in school. None of this, all this was completely foreign to me, and it left a burning desire to. It's like, what does consciousness and geometry have in relationship to each other? And it seemed to hold some type of key to understanding the matrix that we are in. So, it's 1977. There wasn't a whole lot of literature at the time on sacred geometry, as they call it. And so I sought out as much information as I could. I heard of the work of Dr. Marcel Vogel, who was working with quartz crystals. And it seems that if you look at the history of the earth, and diverse cultures over great expanses of time have all had this attributes to this clear stone that all are similar. So obviously it's some type of scientific yet to be discovered in the future science that's connected with the geometry that's within the quartz crystal. So I drove in the middle of a storm all the way up to see Dr. Vogel in his home in San Jose. And this was, early 1980s. I think it was right around 1980. Knocked on his door. He invited me in, and I sat down on his couch. There was a doctor sitting there. He was working with 24 medical doctors, teaching him how to heal with a specific technique. I said, I heard about your work. I'm fascinated. I need to learn more, and at the time I was working with the government, a Naval Electronic Engineering Center for many decades, I could say. So he invited me to be a research associate. He turned off all the lights. We played classical music for about a half an hour in the dark. A knock came on the door. A woman who heard that he was working with medical doctors and healing brought her daughter, and the daughter had a tumor that was protruding about 3/4 to a half an inch off of her ankle. And as I was sitting on the couch with this other doctor, as I watched him perform the procedure that he developed over time, this all evolved out of plant communication, believe it or not, we observed, and the tumor actually dematerialized in front of us instantaneously. That left a huge impression on me, that this man has figured out that the structure, the holographic structure of our 3D reality can be interfaced with consciousness to go in and restructure the formative pattern that happens from the higher level into the lower physical dimension. And obviously, it proved it in front of me. I traveled to the mines in Arkansas. I brought him tons of crystals for the doctors. They started cutting. How all this came about was, he, as a child, when he was 13 years old, he was trying to figure out why a firefly glowed. And he set up a laboratory with the help of his dad, in the backyard. And he had all kinds of things that set up and understood how fireflies luminesce. And when he was older, he set up Vogel Luminescence in a company in San Francisco. IBM grabbed him up because of his incredible, he had an incredible genius mind, one of those kind of minds that once you have a question, he would, relentlessly pursue what the answer would be. He has hundreds of patents. He developed the magnetic coating on hard drives that everyone uses. Now it's solid state drives, but the red and blue phosphors that were used on color television at the time, liquid crystals. I mean, the man was an extraordinary genius, and IBM recognized that, and he wanted him to teach the other engineers a course on creativity. So he had about 30 engineers. He read this article in Fate magazine about Cleve Baxter, who was a CIA polygraph expert who had hooked up plants onto the lie detector, so to speak, and found that, somebody could come in and trash the plants and then go away. And if that person came back, the plants would start reacting, because that particular person would come back in. And he thought this was absolute garbage, and he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. And he thought, well, no, this could be a great thing for the creativity for the engineers. So what he did was he hooked up a split leaf philodendron on his laboratory. He hooked up a script chart recorder, And now I'll show you what happened. I'll just go here to share screen. Here's Marcel in his laboratory with an electron microscope that he put together. In the beginning here we go. The script chart recorder was going along. He burned the plant leaf and he got a huge response. But the minute that he thought about burning the plant again, you can see what happened here. It was a huge response. And he said that squiggle changed his life because he realized that the energies of mind could be projected into the plant and the plant could react. And so he did it from 7 miles away with a research associate and was able to psychically tune into the plant, and he got the squiggle. He did it from 14 miles away, same thing. Then he went all the way on the other side of the planet to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and tuned into the plant, and it squiggled. So it shows that the inverse square law of distance doesn't apply with these sciences that are all things are connected, and the energies of mind are instantaneous when they connect. He was written up in a book called The Secret Life of Plants, talking about this, and he had to do a lecture in Science of Mind and Church of Religious Science that a woman came up to him and said, I've been told to give you this crystal. And he thought, oh my God, this is woo-woo stuff, right? Him being the scientist that he is. He took it, and he found that, by the way, when he was working with the plant, he was also studying pranayama yoga, which he found there's a connection with the breath and the projection of thought. And he found that when he pulsed his breath, like in martial arts, like that, sorry about that. But, it's like this pulse. What happens, he got a far more dramatic response when he pulsed his breath into it. And so there was a colleague working at IBM that had a back injury. He was in incredible pain. And so he tried the crystal on it. He was able to heal him. The pain went away. And so he was thinking, how can we take a regular crystal, one that normally grows in nature, that has 6 sides to it. How can we convert this into a more of a scientific instrument that could have more of a and how to put it, you can have more of a immediate transformation happening. What he also used to say to me is that the sciences that we're working in are akin to the sciences and metaphysics are akin to those that we know in a regular world in regular physics. And that he had a dream in the middle of the night, as many scientists do that try to find answers, and they find it in the middle of the night when they're sleeping. And he had this vision of a dipyramidal pyramid, similar to in the Tree of Life, where, in the Tree of Life, you have the unmanifest, the beginning of creation, as it comes down to the different layers of manifestation into the physical manifestation world. And so what he did was he cut the crystal in such a way as if I get the right image up here. Here we go. And when you look at how a laser works, a laser, you normally have like there's different types of laser, but for example, in a ruby laser, the ruby crystal is excited by the flash lamp, and this excitation starts to oscillate back and forth between the 2 mirrors. One mirror is 100% reflective. The other one's partially reflective, like maybe 99%. And that 1% that comes out is so powerful because of this lasing effect, which was no doubt, probably a result from the Roswell crash, has the ability to, so powerful, the light beam can cut through steel. So what he did was he cut the crystal so that one angle was the female and the other was the male. The female had a 52-degree angle, which is kind of the universal receiving end. It would be like the input, and the output was a more acute angle, which would be the projecting angle. And if you look at let's see if I can get the oh, it won't let me see the let me stop the share first. That when I share it, it covers up the menu so I can't see what it is. Okay, here it goes. Here's what's interesting. The 52-degree angle is important to understand. Is the angle that the quartz crystal grows. All 6 facets, they're all exactly at 52 degrees angles. What else is at 52-degree angles? The Great Pyramid in Egypt actually is 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 14 seconds to be exact, but it's very close to 52-degree angles. And if you take the sides of the pyramid and look at the relationship to the peak, to the base, you have what's called the golden mean ratio, which is the only ratio in nature that continues on fractally into infinity. And so there's some keys here that started to make sense on why is it that this substance, this quartz crystal, why is it the lattice structure in it, which is both hexagonal and tetrahedral, such as, the 64 tetrahedron grid here behind me that Nassim Haramein showed me. By the way, after I went to Washington to testify, I met with a bunch of scientists with Dr. Greer in a home in San Francisco, and all these scientists had their horror stories about what happened and their laboratories getting cleaned out. One scientist had a crystal that was able to generate an enormous amount of power out of, and they came in like a SWAT team and cleaned out their whole laboratory. And Marcel always used to say, if we ever discover anything highly significant, and I thought he was being conspiratorial at the time, the government would come in and clean out our laboratory. One of the scientists there had his laptop, and he was showing me an energy device that was using geometry, like a half sphere that was powering a light bulb. And I didn't know who he was. His name was Nassim Haramein. Yeah, some of you may know who he is. And I felt compelled to share with him my my ET or multidimensional being, whatever that being was. I had millions of volts going through my hands and my feet, as though they needed to raise my vibrational level up to convey something to me. I shared with him the experience, and he says, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. That's how the matrix is, into the other. And, so much I didn't understand back then in the 80s, that as I look through science articles, you start to find the periodic table of elements are based on tetrahedral geometries or DNA, the amino acids, our planets have Earth, the sun, and all the planets all have the star tetrahedral, and the Russians discovered the dodecahedron grid. There's one geometry into the next, and each geometry is a different frequency. And as it shifts from one geometry to the next, the nodal points, they connect together. And where they connect, there's a vortex motion, a spinning motion. And that's how the crystals for Marcel were cut. Oh, take one here. Get caught up in my wire here. Right down the axis of the crystal is what's called the C-axis. It's the growth axis. Crystals grow in a spiral, in a vortex. They're either left-handed or right-handed crystals, and you can tell on a natural crystal where the facets are, whether it's a left or right-hand spiral that's going. And so with a Vogel type crystal, some of the knockoffs, they happen to hit it right, sometimes they don't, but with a properly cut crystal, the C-axis is exactly lined up with the points. So the energy spirals down and they go from, they started with a four-sided crystal like this. This one Marcel cut as a gift for me. And they keep going up to more sides. This is a 16 side. And what that does is as the energy spirals through the crystal, the more sides creates more of a spin. So they're different frequencies, but all crystals work. And anybody has even a little crystal, or they all have the crystalline lattice structure that's within all quartz crystals, so they all work. The Vogel crystals are like a fine-tuned instrument that are used specifically. I used it quite a bit. The first time I ever used it is kind of an interesting story. It's when Marcel cut that one for a gift and he trained me how to use it. I got on the plane and a football player was sitting next to me on the airline, and he was holding his knee in pain, kind of rocking back and forth. And it turned out he just had surgery on his knee. And I was thinking, well, let's see, I've been given a gift. I said, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm kind of an experimental scientist, but if you'd like, we could try some unusual techniques. He said it can't hurt you. And oh yeah, so he was all into it, so I did the procedure, with the breath, and got him into go into that area where the pain was, and we're able to release it. And he got off the plane and he pointed to me, that guy, he cured my leg. But I didn't cure his leg. I was mainly acting as a facilitator for him to heal himself. And what the crystals do is they're like a multi-dimensional transducer. And there's some interesting interesting ideas here I'd like to share with you. Should I pause every so often and ask for questions, or should I hold off and kind of wait till it all?
You can just keep going. I mean, go as far as you need. And then when people have questions, they will put their notification for their hand being raised. And at that point, we might pause the conversation to take the questions. So just continue as you would.
Oh, okay. All right. Just checking. Don't want to hog the whole show here forever. Let's see. Go share screen. Here shows how the crystals go in left and right hand spirals. I don't have this fully organized, so bear with me. I may be jumping around quite a bit. Let's see, this goes kind of into geometry. Here's one thing that's interesting. When they went down to Antarctica and they dug these deep core samples into the Antarctic ice, what they found is that water and quartz both have unique universal resonating properties. And this was discovered when they dug down into the ice core samples and found the geometry of all the major classes of crystallization are in water, showing that water has this ability to universally resonate with all frequencies and all geometries. Everybody's familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, where they capture at the moment of freezing. Water has this ability to reflect its environment, and it's extremely sensitive. It will reflect whatever's in the area, and when they capture it in freezing, it shows shows a patterning. Obviously, the matrix is love, and that anything that's in alignment with that shows the hexagonal geometry of the matrix that we're in, whereas the other ones are purely distortions. Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting thing. Between water, here I have this set up over here. Between water and quartz, there's intermolecular bonding angles between water and quartz. And what Marcel was able to do is to transfer from a quartz crystal the essence of a fine wine into a rot gut California wine in Northern California. What he did, he took 7 right-hand turns and spiraled it around the crystal and ran thousands of gallons of this rot gut wine. And it created all of it, a California award-winning wine. So what was going on was there's, I call it, I haven't heard it, it's kind of my own term. I haven't heard anybody use this term before, but I call it angular harmonic resonance. Whereas quartz has a 52-degree angle resonance of the intermolecular bonding angle, as we just showed. Water has, in that diagram I was just showing, has it at 26 degrees and 104 degrees. Now, what's interesting about that is, what's half of 52 degrees? 26. What's 2 times 52 degrees? It's 104. And in science, let's see, I'll share screen one more. In science, here you can see here's the bonding angles. In science, myself being a radio broadcast engineer, I'm aware that when you broadcast a frequency, let's say if you broadcast on 1 megahertz, for example, you're going to have harmonics at 2 megahertz, at 4 megahertz, on down the scale. You can see here's a spectrum analyzer showing the harmonics going on. So there's information. When I was a broadcast engineer, there was something that was picking up our second harmonic of our FM broadcast station. And I had to use a spectrum analyzer to try to identify where it was. And what it was doing was it was picking up the second harmonic and rebroadcasting it on another frequency that was, causing interference. Nowadays, they have a lot of harmonic suppressions, but it just shows that the same information that was broadcast, the music and news reports and everything, were being broadcast also on the higher harmonics. And so with quartz, here's the example of quartz crystal with the 7 turns. With the quartz and the water, there is this relationship. And if anybody goes to marcelvogel.org, you can see the PDF of the scientific articles that were written about how there's this information exchange between SiO2, quartz, and H2O, water, due to this relationship. Let's see. Let's see. I guess I could share a little bit about the healing process that Marcel shared. And this is, this is kind of condensed and summated into a very short presentation. But how the process would go would be, let's say somebody had an injury. Let's say something on their arm, or they had a back problem. Broken bones and things like that seem to work well because of the piezoelectric quality within the body. What you would do, and this is, the person has to be willing to go along with it. You can't force, I'm going to heal you, you have to, I rarely do it. Sometimes the situation calls for it. I used it probably about 100 times on different situations, saw amazing things happen. I'm always grateful that the technology works. And the more you use the crystal, as you know, the more you get a sense, such as when you go in with the crystal into a person's energetic field, a lot of times it goes into this thymus area. When you rotate the crystal, Marcel used to call it a critical rotational angle. There is a point everybody has from their soul, their own unique frequency that's in your DNA. And when you attune, it's almost like a radio dial where you tune into, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. I don't know how to describe it, but when you tune, you'll feel all of a sudden, it'll feel like a stop. And once you become in resonance with the person, become one with the person, and then you have the person do deep breathing, can't work on a person whose energy is completely depleted. They have to build up, and the breath helps build up the energy in that person. And so you breathe along with the person, and you have they say, ask and you shall receive, right? And so you ask the person to go in with their mind's eye. And usually when you have something that's bothering you, it'll guide you right into where the pain is. And you ask to be shown, what is the root core of this distortion that's in, from our soul pattern, we have perfection coming into our 3D physical manifestation. And along the way, there's, our karmic lessons and everything we have, as we come into our physical form. So on the soul level, we have perfection. And so if you can go in and amplify, and how that amplification happens is rather a kind of a rotational angle into the area, and you're breathing along with the person, and the person knows that when it'll be a release breath. There'll be a series of breaths. So you build up, and the person is locking on, getting a good fix on it, right? And then when they, this is my own terminology, Marcel used his own way of explaining it, when you got a good fix on it, at the intake of the breath, at the peak, all of a sudden, then you go and you lock onto it with the person. This all happens simultaneously. And then it's like you pull out the distorting program, like that with a sharp pulse of breath. And then you replenish with love. Love is the integrative force that makes us whole. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of in a short nutshell. There's a lot of little more procedures and things that go along with all that, but that's kind of the basic. And we don't need crystals to do, we have the abilities within us to do healing and things without the need of a crystal. But a crystal has this quality to it that what I see it as, when you're looking at the sciences being akin, like here's an example. Here's an example of, there's a quartz crystalline structure. We have the repetitive crystalline. And this glass, if you see a glass crystal and a quartz crystal, there's a big difference between the two. The Russians did an experiment where they had a glass window, and then they replaced it with a quartz window, and the cell culture could communicate to the other one and communicate the disease, unfortunately, to show that it acts as a window for these higher dimensional energies. As the crystal has a hexagonal quality to it, where you have the positive and negative triads are perfect balance in the center. When you put physical pressure, it's called the piezoelectric effect. When you put physical pressure on it, you get a huge voltage spike on the outside, because what you're doing is you're offsetting the positive negative charge centers on trillions of these little six-pointed star configurations that are in the crystal, and it creates the voltage that makes them useful for frequency generation. Once a crystal is cut, they're very precise and it stays on that particular frequency. The lattice structure. Now, the lattice structure, if we look at the now I'm always thinking in terms of a broadcast engineer, even from very high frequencies to HARP in Alaska. These are all examples of what's called a phased array. A phased array means that you take one antenna and then you duplicate that antenna next to it exactly the same, and you get a 3 dB gain. And if you duplicate it again, you get another gain, and you keep on, you get this tremendous gain. And similar to how we have this lattice structure that's aligned with this universal matrix in which appears to interface with mind, amplifies. And that's just how it amplifies in the electromagnetic spectrum. The interface with consciousness into the quartz is similar. There's a crop circle going over. Also, if you look at the flower of life, as you look at it in 3D, it's basically the geometry within the quartz crystal. Here's some grid examples of the planet, our body. Even the planets, the orbits around the planets have different geometries associated with. There's what Kepler was doing. Even the scale of the entire galaxy, from the smallest proton to the size of the galaxy, there is this mathematical ratio that's consistent going into infinity. And if people are familiar with psionics, where you can oscillate a liquid and they will form, different geometries according to the frequency of the geometry, which gives a clue to how matter is in form. And also the periodic table of elements is also connected. Our DNA is geometry, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, so I've been silent the whole time because I truly just wanted to allow you to share with everyone else all of the things that I've already researched a lot, because I've been following Marcel since about 2014, and I've watched probably all of his videos on YouTube. But I just wanted you to be able to get some information out there for the people who have not actually traversed any of this knowledge that's available on the internet. And because I myself am just enamored and fascinated, always have been all my life, with crystals, and just the sight of a crystal would always just get some sort of excitement from me, even as a child. And working with the crystals like I do, after learning some of the techniques from Marcel's work, just going out into nature, divining with dowsing rods for the energy grids that need to be healed, and then applying Marcel's technique with the breath work, the pranayama, and recharging the crystal with the healing, and just envisioning this healing coming through the body into the earth. It has an effect, a profound effect on this energy that surrounds us. So the implications of this discussion that we're having and the knowledge therein is vast. I mean, we're talking about the entire existence of this world that we live in right now, really, is that, because water is everywhere. Crystalline structures are everywhere. We are crystalline structures.
That's right.
And the matrix is all interwoven. So it only proves that we are one. We are absolutely, unfathomably one. And with that, we do have someone who has a question. Raha.
I just want to agree with what you're saying. Yes.
Yes. Raha, would you please unmute your microphone? You have a question? Uh-oh, having technical difficulties.
Okay.
If it doesn't work, you can also put your question in the chat and we can also ask that for you if you want, if you're having some technical difficulties. But yes.
To affirm what you were saying, I could share briefly about the camera, which basically proves that all points in time and space are interconnected, and that the nature of reality is hollow and fractal that goes into infinity. And this device that we worked on, back in the 1980s, patented by the European Patent Office, thousands of photographs were made with it. It's indisputable that it worked, So did we have somebody come back in, or the?
We don't have any hands up just yet. And people, all of my members and all the people in the chat, please just go ahead. If you want to start asking questions, I believe now is the time to start chiming in if you have any questions. And I just wanted to say, I've watched a lot of these videos, because I love combining the science with the spirituality and then blending them together. So I've seen videos about the Mandelbrot set and how, life begets life, and it just spirals through so many dimensions we don't even see, we're not aware of. And I believe that also ties in, with you talking about how this matrix is interwoven into everything. It reminded me of when I heard the story about the atom bomb that was discharged, and how soon afterward is when we started experiencing a lot of the UFO phenomena. And there's some stories that go along with that about the communications that were then happening afterwards. But
yeah. Ellen, allow me to just briefly introduce everybody to the DeLaWarr Camera that I worked on, and the principles, which is the main part, because that's what we were working on, is the principles of the camera to bring it into the current technology. Here is a picture of the camera back in the 1950s. Simon probably is well aware of this one, with the George and Marjorie DeLaWarr laboratories. And it's based on a hologram. And in fact, all life is like a hologram. What is a hologram? You have interference patterns, and it creates an image. You have like a laser, and you split the beam so that one's a reference beam, the other one hits the object, and then the interference between the two beams creates in space what's called a hologram. That's how a hologram works. The instrument, this is from the European Patent Office, would be able to project into space a 3D hologram and reflect back onto a photographic plate that was right here, and they would capture a slice of this on the sensitive silver emulsion on the photographic plate of the holographic projection. Here's a photo of a woman's pregnancy. She was 50 miles away, and it shows the skeletal structure of the fetus. And what was interesting was they were able, with this camera, and I've worked on a number of radionic instruments, and this one was the only one that had a time spiral. And this time spiral could move forwards and backwards in the time. Here's some photos I took of the instrument, beautifully machined out of brass, the dials that tune in. This is a time spiral. These are the above cavity reflecting back onto the plate. Let's see, and then this is a long discussion about how it all works. And here is this one group scientific group found that there was indeed three-dimensional imagery in the photograph that we had. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So does that have any connection to the chronoscope and the chronovisor that I've heard about? Have you heard of those
oh
items?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Well, what's interesting, if you take a drop of blood or, you know, hair or something like that, that links to the DNA, that frequency, you can be on Mars or anywhere, and you could tune in to that person, and it could project that image, what aspect you were tuning into. Ruth Drown in the 1950s in Hollywood was able to create what's called the drown vision. She was able to do the same thing, based on, she was inspired by the McGregor Matthews book on the Kabbalah Unveiled, and so she made all her tuning dials that of the Sephira of the Tree of Life, and it's kind of interesting. There was a person that had an operation, and they were in Ohio, and she was in California, and took a photo and found out they did an operation, and they left a medical instrument, and then sure enough, it validated that, you know, it was an actual photograph. Also, I knew a fellow named Trevor James Constable, who had some photographs from Adamski, who she put into the radionic instrument, and it could see like an X-ray cross section of what they called the Andromeda device, which is a huge cigar-shaped spacecraft that had little Nazi saucers inside of it. And, you know, as you research into this, you find out, you know, the whole Adamski thing with the Space Brothers from Venus was actually the Nazis, you know, attempting to fool us, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it is kind of interesting. So the main thing about the camera is that it shows that you can link to somebody anywhere in the universe, and within that drop of blood contains, just like every part of your body is like a fractal of every other part of your body. That's why, you know, you can connect to all your organs and everything in your hands and your feet and your ears, and, you know, in like Chinese medicine, it's like fractals of the entire body. And so just like, you know, a drop of blood contains the whole of the individual in that drop of blood. So anyway, it's an interesting scientific concept to understand how the universe is structured that way.
Yeah, you know, and it just, my mind just starts reeling into all these other subjects, and especially in current events today, on how they're doing like a DNA grab right now with collecting all the genetics from everybody.
You can imagine, you know, in the secret space programs, of course, you know, what I worked on was an antique, with the principles are still the same. And you can imagine with unlimited money and some of the most brilliant minds and the correct science that we have not been taught, they can, with the med beds, you know, take the frequency and reconstruct an entire body. You chop your arm off, they restructure it back again, you know. So, and, you know, and the food replicators as well, you know, you have a cheeseburger and a chocolate shake, you can have the same exact cheeseburger and chocolate shake every single time.
Mhm. Exactly. I mean, that's what they're doing with the lab grown meat, but it also reminded me when you talked about chopping someone's arm off. So I watched a video about some ormus that this lady had. She had ormus in the form of a lotion that she would apply to her skin, and her cat had ended up getting its tail cut off. And it was a black cat, but somehow the tail got amputated, and the cat wanted to eat the lotion. So the woman allowed this cat to eat this ormus-based lotion. And as it did, they noticed that the cat's tail started regrowing. It started regrowing like a small little nub. And they took, you know, progressional photos as this cat regrew its tail. And you can look this story up on YouTube, because I'm that person that goes and I go down these rabbit holes, you know, of information. But it just fascinates me, because truly, when we tap into this knowledge that's been hidden from all of us, there's really no end to our creation if we can learn to use it wisely and with love, because love is the creation of all.
Well, love is so important. That was one thing that separated Marcel from the other scientists. He incorporated love, as you know, as he said, when I love you, it empowers you to be whole. You know, because it's actually, love is the acknowledgement of the oneness that we're all connected to, which is the truth. We're all interconnected. There's no question about that. So yeah, planet needs a lot of love right now.
Yeah, we can use a lot of love and understanding each other. So we do have some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking them, because I know we're probably
Sure.
going to be really.
Sure. I know there's some areas I probably missed and didn't cover. I don't have this super organized. I'm just off the top of my head, you know, sharing some of the highlights of working with this. And, you know, the crystals are basically reflecting the matrix in which we are in. And Marcel used to say that the thoughts that we think, and you know, Dr. Emoto's work kind of shows that as well, that they are geometric in nature. And we were able to, you know, I when I was working with the Navy in electronics, I was able to get some of the lab equipment like a spectrophotometer. And he took a little vial of water and pulsed his breath into it, and the energy bands would change in the water. And then you pulse it with the intention to clear it, and the bands would go away, or take a magnet and go over it and would go away. So we're able to measure the energies of mind as it affected the water. And this was way before Dr. Emoto's work.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I've followed Dr. Emoto. And I remember watching some of the videos back in the 70s, I think, about how they were learning about the consciousness of plants then. They had, in a lab, they had some boiling water, and they were going to pour some plankton into the water. And the plants were freaking out, you know, on the little graph. So I'm sure that that was part of Marcel's work. I mean, I know that he was very heavily involved in that before he got into the crystals. So, but with that, I want to go ahead and get to some of our members' questions, so that we can kind of get everybody's things that they want to say out. So Edwina, I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Okay, I had to unmute. How's everybody? I just had a
Hello.
couple of quick questions. One was when you mentioned the angular harmonic resonance, is that related to structured water? And then you mentioned the higher harmonics. I wanted to know, was that related to, you said the music was bouncing and going to a higher harmonic. I was wondering, was that related to higher levels of consciousness or higher dimensions?
Yeah, everything's related to higher dimensions of consciousness. As far as the angular harmonic resonance within the water that resonates with the quartz, the two things that quartz crystals and water have in common is that they are both the only two substances that I've come across on the planet that are universally resonant to all frequencies, all geometries. And the fact that they are not dealing with electromagnetic frequencies, but rather angular. Angular harmonic resonance, as I mentioned, you know, the 2604 is like multiples of, and half of the 52-degree angle. And because of this angular relationship, they're able to communicate to each other. There's another point I was going to make on that. Anyway, am I answering your question, Edwin? And
Yes, I was, you hear now about structured water, and Corey Good, he was mentioning, he was also, Corey Good, but he also mentioned that when they were off planet doing things, that they would take very good care of them. They would give them structured water. And then, the technology now is, the water spins through this, through this device.
oh,
Yeah, and I was wondering, was that related to what you were mentioning with the angular harmonic resonance?
well, it's when water is structured in its perfect hexagonal geometry structure. In other words, when you, like, I'm drinking structured water here myself. Good stuff. What when water goes through pipes and things, or around bad juju or whatever, it becomes distorted. It doesn't have its hexagonal geometry. But when you take water and, through people vortex the water, people use crystals, there's a lot of different ways of structuring water. What happens is it brings the water into its natural hexagonal geometry. And why is that important? Is because when you take water that's structured into your body, the body and all its different organs that operate on all different frequencies, right, can immediately assimilate it, just like we found, all the different geometries within the ice core samples that water resonates with. An early pioneer in radionics, Hieronymus, found in the meat market in Paris, where fresh cut organs from different animals was in front of the glass, and it had like a what do you call it? It was like cold, and you could see the crystallization of different geometries of, like, a liver or a heart or whatever. They all have different geometries. All of our different organs have different frequency complex geometries. And when you take in water that's structured, it doesn't have to pull from the body's own energy in order to structure it, to make it assimilable. It already is ready to use because it's in its universally resonant shape that the body can immediately use. And that's why structured water is healthy for the body.
Yeah, so that's where Marcel's work comes in. I mean, not Marcel, but Dr. Emoto. Like, you can actually just put your gratitude in the water and it will begin to restructure without using a crystal. So it's really just about our intentions coupled with our emotions, because that's how I've learned how to manifest things into my reality.
It shows that it's the natural love, gratitude, everything on that side of of fear, hate, and anger, and everything like that. Everything that's on that other side, that is love, gratitude, happiness, joy, all of that is in alignment with the matrix that we are in. Anything else is a distortion.
Yes. I'm trying to answer questions in the chat, but yes, I agree with you, because I've just been practicing with things in my own home, in my own life, that you can. Someone said, can you structure the water? Like, where do you get it? You make it. You just put your intention towards your water that you're going to be drinking, and you can change its properties.
Absolutely.
They'll just start to form into beautiful crystals. And I do highly recommend that everybody listening to this go and research Dr. Masaru Emoto. He's a Japanese scientist. He's the one who did all the water studies. And you can just heal your water yourself, and do this when you're walking outside, or do this for your own body. What are you doing to yourself? This is another thing that we need to bring into the perspective, is that we're causing a lot of our own illnesses by being angry, by being frustrated, by having anxieties. The body stores the information because we're made of water and crystalline properties. So I just want to emphasize that before we move on to more questions, because I do, and you might not know this, Dan, but I do Dolores Cannon's QHHT, which is a quantum healing hypnosis technique. And she found throughout her years of studying all of her clients that they were actually storing their emotions in their body parts, and that was causing their dysfunction. So we need to really consider these things, you know, in a broader scale, and look at the world from outside. Like if you were on the moon, look down into the planet and look at all of the healing that we have got to do. We've got an entire planet to heal. So what can we do after this meeting tonight to start implementing some of these ideas and concepts into our own lives? And with that, Dan, I would like to go ahead and move on with some of these questions. We got people with their hands up. So
I just want to reiterate, it's important when you take water, whenever you drink water, just acknowledge the beautiful water that you're assuming into your body, that it's being used in the most benevolent way possible for your body, and to put that thought into the water just before drinking it. It's very important.
yes, and that's also why, you know, they teach you how to pray. Thank you for that demonstration, Dan, because it's, why do we pray over water and food before we consume it? Well, this is why, and we're proving it with science. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to Elaine. Elaine, would you go ahead and unmute your microphone?
Hi, thanks for allowing me to join the call. Dan, I have a quick question. I have a Vogel crystal here, and it's got 24 cut sides, and I thought that I heard you mention that they can go up to 16 sides. Is there a way to tell whether it's a true Vogel crystal from a knockoff?
Well, they all of them work, all the way from 4 sides up to 104. I've seen ridiculous doing 144 sides, but you know, Marcel never went above 24 sides. I'm not even sure if he did 24 sides. He did what he used a lot back then was 8 and 16, but all of them work. They have 13 sided. They all work, and most likely your Vogel cut crystal, you know, that there's only one cutter that's left that's been trained by Marcel to do it properly, and you know, and they're expensive, you know, they're pricey. So you know, I encourage getting a Vogel knockoff, you know, if you can't afford it. And a regular crystal too, you know, is effective. And I suggest letting the crystal, you know, let you know that you know, it was one speaking to you. Go for that one, you know, intuitively. It's pretty much in the use of the practitioner of the crystal. You know, it's important to build a charge with your Vogel crystal. And he used to rotate it like that and build it and connect it with it, become one. And he build a charge with it, you know, kind of like squeezing and rotating it. And then once you've built up a charge, you can feel it when you project the energy onto your other hand, like that. So, and you know, on marcelvogel.org, there's a number of PDF documents and videos that kind of show some of the procedures that I kind of consolidated down on this presentation, and utilize those with your Vogel type crystal. It may be slightly off from the, but it doesn't say that it's not functional and not working, because it's quartz, right? So
Okay, thank you.
Exactly. I mean, I know that, you know, just working with my little average crystals, I mean, I can feel it. And I use the technique that Marcel was talking about, where you connect through the thymus. And I can only describe that when you hit a certain point, you may feel a very subtle something that's like a heart palpitation. Like you'll feel like this little it's almost like a little skip in your heartbeat or something. You feel so, it's hard to describe really, but it's so subtle. And I actually did this on Friday night with two of my friends. I was like, hey, may I work with you with this crystal and tap into your field? And they agreed. So as soon as I dialed it in and then began slowly turning clockwise, they said, oh, I feel it. And she, without me even describing what the sensation was like, she was like, it's almost like a subtle heart palpitation. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. You know, I was so excited because it was very similar. So I had something to compare to. But I'm going to go ahead. We're going to get Amy Luke's question now.
Hi, can you
Hi,
hear me?
Amy. I
Oh,
can.
hi. I actually, I think that you answered my question, but I was pretty, just wanted to clarify. Like I do have a lot of crystals and none of them are Marcel Vogel, but I've heard of them in the past, and I'm going to research it more. But in the meantime, I do have a ton of quartz crystals and amethyst and all these different crystals. So they all can work. We can use them for all these different processes, or the things that Marcel describes like on his website and the processes you're talking about that you learned. Do we need to do that with just a Vogel crystal?
And I wanted to make clear that it doesn't matter the size of the crystal. You can have a small crystal. You know, the Indians use a little finger crystal, you know, that they use. And, you know, different types of crystals, amethyst, rose quartz, and all like that. They're basically, they have different, they're quartzes, but they have, you know, different minerals in them that make them specific to frequencies, like each, like diamonds, rubies, emeralds, you know, all the different types of crystals that we have on this planet all have specific frequencies and specific uses. The clear quartz is the most universal. And that's what gathered my interest, is the universality. Why is it universal, like water? It seems that the you know, I have to agree a lot with Nassim Haramein, you know, that there is like this tetrahedral grid, so to speak, which goes into infinity, which interacts with consciousness. That I don't have the full answers to all this stuff. I'm just, you know, as you can say, I'm scratching the surface of the crystal, you know, of the knowledge. But there's a lot of indicators, is like what I like to call them, that have been revealed that point to this in the future, or once they, you know, reveal the secret space program and the true sciences come out, will enlighten mankind and womankind into understanding the matrix that we are in, and that how that relates to our consciousness and geometry. You know, I know the extraterrestrial races have got this, you know, figured out pretty much, but yeah, you can use any of your crystals in that way.
And they all
You know,
have
that are clear, you know, the quartz crystals.
Quartz crystals. Okay, and they all have that different spiral left or right. No matter what, I can look and sort of determine that they
And
have
it
a
doesn't
left
matter
or...
which way they spin. You know, the main thing is that the vortexal spin that goes down the growth axis of the crystal is part of the understanding of this very vortex, is how yeah, Ellen, I haven't sure, I had a ET experience on board a craft. They put me through this spinning thing that was so intense. I had to say, I can't take this. I turned this over to my higher self, and they put me through a dimensional portal where I was into this incredible exalted state of consciousness that I was experiencing, and I was able to bring it back into my waking state, but only for so long. But it was kind of interesting that they put me through this. You have to think about the the whirling dervishes and, you know, all these different things and vortexes that they have. There's this spinning action that seems to be associated with the shift from one frequency dimension into the next.
Mm. Oh, that's very interesting. Very cool. Well, thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Dan, that, you know, I've watched videos where they talk about the toroidal energy fields, even when we are being created in the womb, how there's this toroidal effect that creates our being, this presence that we have. And so, and pretty much that goes for everything in life when we're talking about the Fibonacci sequence and, you know, how fruits are formed. And, you know, you can see the toroidal effect of an apple because it has like the 2 points going inward into the circle. But yeah, so
here's a really quick quick screen share on that experience. I had to write this thing down. Anyway, there was all these little guys, and there was this big guy that was in control of this device or whatever it was, and then it put me through this incredible spinning sensation. I felt like I was up on top of this beautiful mountain. I can't even describe the consciousness that was going on. Then I found myself in an old-time movie theater, as though it was in between the frames of creation. I was seeing the pulses of this projection of reality, that I was projecting this reality. And I just jokingly said to myself, as I'm in this movie theater kind of thing, I said, okay, what's the name of this movie? And it said, in beautiful script, it wrote, The Journey of a Mystic. And then I said, I bet I could bring this back into my consciousness. And that's kind of the long and short of of what happened back in that was another thing that happened in 1977, was on board this craft and the spinning sensation. And what they were showing is that when you go up into the higher levels of consciousness, you can actually, reality is an illusion because it's happening so quick that it's like a 60-cycle light bulb, like a fluorescent light, is actually flashing off and on 60 times a second, but the eye can only determine 30 times a second. So it appears to be solid and on. Reality is similar to that, whereas everything, if you can go up into a higher level of consciousness, you can almost see between the pulses of reality, as you know, as you create and project by acknowledging, it kind of reflects and creates this feedback loop, so to speak. And if you can go to that higher level, which, you know, a crystal allows a bridge to happen with that, with matter, you can transform the physical reality.
yeah, and it makes sense to me. I don't know. Some part of me, some aspect of my higher self understands all of this. But I want to know, so what is the connection of the crystals with the flower of life? I mean, is that still part of like the Metatron design like you have behind you, is since the flower of life is integrated into that?
Well, when you look at let me get an example here. The crystal, back to share screen again. The crystal, the lattice structure, is actually made up of nothing but tetrahedrons. And the tetrahedrons, as they connect together, they form this grid pattern. You can see the physical tetrahedrons all connected together here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you project that in a flat array, it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the flower of life and you put it into, if you look at it in 3D with the tetrahedrons, and you project it into a flat 2D image, it turns into the flower of life. So the tetrahedral array, you notice it's hexagonal, the 6 sides to it, is representation of the matrix in which we are in.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, because that design that's behind you integrates all of the other geometries that exist, pretty much, correct?
Yeah, according to Nassim Haramein, it is the tetrahedral structure matrix. Yes, it incorporates, and you can see how that happens by this screen share. Let's see.
Is that what
Here
this
you have this hexagonal matrix, and look inside this hexagonal matrix. You have, you know, star tetrahedron, you have the cube, you have the octahedron, you have the dodecahedron, you have the isosahedron, all within this hexagonal matrix that which is represented within the quartz crystal, and the angle of the crystal is indicative, just like in the Great Pyramid in Egypt was designed specifically at that angle because it resonates into infinity in perfect harmonic ratio.
And when you talked about that with the Great Pyramid, it made me wonder, like, how much more of the pyramid is actually underground, where the actual earth that it's sitting on is giving the piezoelectric charge from the weight of the earth, like squeezing, compressing against it on all sides, and actually initiating, you know, that charge out into the atmosphere.
You know, well, speaking of pyramids and speaking of Atlantis, I knew a fellow, his name was Dr. Ray Brown, and he was deep sea diving, treasure hunting, and went into off the coast of Bimini. This was in the movie or the series In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, where he went into this room. My brother happened to stay with him 2 weeks, and he gave him a detailed description of what this room inside this pyramid off of off of Bimini. And this thing was huge. It was a giant pyramid, and it was all illuminated on the inside. And in the room, it had 7 chairs in a circle, with one chair being higher than the other, all surrounding a pedestal, which on the pedestal, it had a crystal, which had a golden rod coming down with a ruby crystal pointing at it, and looked like it was incredible energy. This is a photograph I took of the actual crystal. Here's kind of an artist's illustration. This is a picture of the pyramid deep under the ocean. And so what it was doing was it was interfacing with these Atlanteans in such a way that the group mind was interfacing into the crystal, and who knows, affecting reality. Who knows what was going on with the advanced sciences back then. But apparently they understood the significance of using, and this crystal was like about the size of a tennis ball. Oddly enough, after Dr. Ray Brown passed away, a caretaker accidentally dropped it and broke it. Actually the full story I've read afterward, he felt there was bad energy in it, and so he put it in a thing of boiling water, and it caused it to crack into pieces. You know, and so I don't know. That it just seemed very, very odd to me to have something of great significance from antiquity to have somebody that's caretaking it like that, almost like it's a front story, because we know that the cabal loves to grab a hold of anything that's advanced technology from ancient times and gave them a substitute. But anyway, you know, talking about pyramids and Atlantis, and even in Antarctica, they're finding pyramids, and I've noticed that the angle on the pyramid is like 52 degrees that they have down, and it's a kind of a universal, pretty much structure of understanding how to interface with the geometry of the matrix we are in.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the keys to knowing a lot about our existence are in Egypt and Antarctica for whatever reason. I know that Egypt has been like long the mystery of the world. Like, how did they build the pyramids? How did they do all these things? And just contemplating a lot of what we're discussing, and then also how sound frequencies can also create things into our reality. I'm just wondering if these Atlantean people with this knowledge would basically come together and use their voice and their thoughts, their sound, and crystal technology to truly create and maybe manifest something directly in front of them. Because I've been following so many different things. Well, one of the people that I follow is Jordan Maxwell, and he talks about where words come from and where all these ideas come from. And he discovered that basically, the words truly have meaning if you really look at the words. And one of the words I'm getting to is spelling, and how we spell with our sentences. And we're basically casting spells at each other when we speak. Because doing research, it seems like the ancient cultures had telepathic capabilities, and we're actually using their thoughts to create imagery, which actually works faster with our brain and all the integration there. But tying into the crystals, I just feel like this is very significant, like what you've discovered, what Marcel is discovering, and how every aspect of this existence has been compartmentalized and fragmented and thrown around the world, just like the pranayama and the crystal technology, this thing about casting spells. And each person is a key to the whole. And if we can just learn to come together to bring all the knowledge and compile it into one, what amazing discoveries we can make once we start learning to do this. And I believe that this is already the process that we're doing now, with all of the Great Awakening and the discoveries that are coming around the world of the pyramids and all the technologies that have been hidden. But
everyone here, no doubt, knows that we are each like a fractal of a larger collective mind, and we're all interconnected, and we can't separate ourselves. And as in holography and anything, if you change any part of the hologram, you change every other part of the hologram. It's like inseparable. And what you're saying about, back in Atlantis, to be able to group, Marcel used to say, we're made in the image and likeness of God, therefore we create. And at some point in this presentation, I'd like to, those that brought crystals, and if you didn't bring a crystal, it doesn't matter, we can still do it. I'd like to do use our collective power to envision, always using love and always for the most benevolent outcome for all concerned. Put a kind of a visualization out. I put together some words, to put some type of focus, but whatever whatever your inspiration is, to put it out, and using the crystals to, when we use, I haven't done this before, this is kind of an interesting experiment. Yeah, anyway, back in the 80s, I did an experiment with a bunch of psychics, and we had some incredible results. So it's kind of good that we try things out like this, because this is using the power of our collective minds to create a reality. And when you interface in with the crystal, there is a, like we talked about with the antennas and everything, it's like we've got a big, badass radio transmitter, right? That putting it out there into the collective mind has a powerful effect. So, you know, at some point, I'd like to all join together like they did in Atlantis, but in a better way, and do a little exercise with our crystals to put it into practical use. And we'll all do some deep breaths, and then we'll pulse it into the, you don't have a crystal, just pulse it out into the collective, pulse it into the crystal, and consider it, you know, as you do with all things in metaphysics, you don't question what you've done. You know, it's almost like when you deliver a letter into a mailbox, you put it in there, and you know the mailman's going to take care of it and deliver it, you know. And you know, they say, and so it is, or so mote it be, or and the truth shall be, you know, however you end it, you acknowledge that you've released it and you know it to be true. And so that's all part of the formula of creation, of affecting the matrix that we're in.
Exactly. No, I love your idea too. And I believe that we could even do this on a regular basis with groups, you know, who wish to join in this kind of collaborative effort to bring about this change, and let's increase this transformation that we're going through right now. You know, I love that, because I love to just experiment with all kinds of positive things. So we do
Can't hurt.
we have someone's hands up. Jesse, you have your hand up. Do you have your camera, Jesse? Do you have camera abilities?
Oh, there it
There you
is. Hello. Hi, Dan. Thank you.
Hi, Jesse.
Thank you for speaking with us today. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I learn things when people ask questions.
Oh, yeah, a lot of your stuff I was familiar with, like especially the water. I had studied Emoto's books on water, which I found fascinating. But I had a question about the what we would call, I guess, our modern scientific community. Do you feel that scientists today, is there still some sort of resistance in whenever they're doing their studies of this or that, to the idea that there is divine design or intelligence in the universe or in all things, and that if they do come up against something that they're experimenting with and they don't understand it or whatever, they just kind of dismiss it and they try to fit it into whatever is being taught or accepted? Do you still find that, like, there's a resistance to that?
Like Einstein used to say, the spooky action at a distance, you know, that would happen. You know, all scientists are different. I think, you know, scientists like in the past, like Tesla and so forth, you know, they were highly spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And everything comes from spirit. And the trouble is that I believe what William Tompkins, who was, you know, rest his soul, disclosed that they basically took and gave us nothing but disinformation in all of our science. And all these people with PhDs, after we went to Washington trying to bring these scientists to prove we have 0-point energy, we don't need nuclear oil and coal. The Bush administration denied it. I volunteered. We have a database of 300 inventors. I traveled around the planet for 10 years, meeting with scientists and inventors, vetting these technologies. What they, I was one of 6 technical advisors. Everybody had multiple PhDs in science, except for myself. I'm pretty much, you know, self-taught. I've gone through some college and university and stuff, but I pretty much, you know, learned on my own and follow my own intuition and my own, you know, experiments. So Marcel used to say, you know, these people that are called themselves scientists with the PhDs, they're nothing but technicians repeating the experiments that they already know how to do. it takes the childlike curiosity that opens up the doorway to, deeper levels of understanding of creation.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Jesse. Do you have any more questions?
What just maybe an observation, he was talking about what to me sounded like universal life force energy, which is omnipresent everywhere. And it's something I'm learning about in my energy healing. And it's just so fascinating how all of this just all ties in together, and how, like he was saying, you don't necessarily need to use crystals. You can, they can help amplify your intentions, I guess. And I'm learning how to and he talked about the radio, like being an antenna. And I'm learning this as well. I just went through my first level studies, and it's so cool. It's like you can learn to tune into this energy like a radio receiver, which I found totally fascinating. And I've actually had some really cool experiences so far with it. But I haven't, I guess I could try a crystal, but I haven't actually tried that. Do you actually like hold a crystal in your hand if you and like set an intention with it to do something for yourself? Like if you want to heal yourself, is that how you amplify your intention, by putting your thought process through the crystal?
On the marcelvogel.org, Marcel goes through some of the self-healing techniques. So myself personally, one time I had a terrible cold. I was sick, fever, runny nose. I felt like, and I just wanted to get out of it. And I used the crystal, and I just totally connect it to how I am when I'm perfectly healthy. And I was able to transform myself that one time. I think working on yourself is probably the biggest challenge. It's easier to work on other people, situations. But I was able to do that one time. And as far as manifestation, one thing I recommend if you really want to get into your dreams is to get a large crystal and have it somewhere near your head, where in your bed. You will find your dreams become very lucid.
Oh yeah.
And you can learn a lot in your dreams. Your higher self is always communicating to you in that way.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. That was a good question. I love all your comments too. We'll have to follow up with you and some of your experiments that you're doing with the crystals and your healing practice. One thing you did mention, Dan, in one of the emails that we were corresponding with, you said the different number of facets, the 4, 6, 8, 16, etc. facets on a crystal determines the energy body you're resonating with to affect a transformation. What are you talking about when you're talking about the energy body that you're resonating with?
Well, your different energy bodies, there's mental, there's emotional, there's spiritual bodies. You have you have different octaves, you could say, of your totalitarian, your total body. Some are on higher frequencies, some are on the lower frequencies. There's not one's better than the other. They're all the same. It's all part of one. And the crystal, Marcel used to say that, I find that, I can use an 8-sided on or 16-sided just as well on somebody, or even a 4-sided, but the spin that the number of facets kind of associates with that particular energy body, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. So I know we talked about the spin rate, and that really is like mirrors that the sides have. All the facets act like
Right.
kind of like mirrors for the energy that's channeling through the crystal. But I do want to say, because I remember in one of Marcel's video how he spoke of the natural crystal versus the lab-grown crystals and how they do not have the same effect. A lab-grown crystal will not have the same abilities as the natural crystals. And I don't know if you remember that, Dan.
Yeah, it's because when a crystal grows, millions of years it takes to form a crystal. And how a crystal forms is that when it has the, silica and in a cave, and what happens is there's a vortex there. There's a vortex that the mineral, the little molecules, they, like a mosaic, they all fit in perfect alignment. They go dunk, 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 and they form, and it spirals up, and it forms the crystal. And this takes some of the crystals are 500 million years old, and the little lines are on the side, these little striations that you see, they can be like 1,000 years each. So you don't get that when you take the substance of quartz and you create an environment for rapid growth. You don't get that, what you get in nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me, that, and two, I feel like the earth consciousness is also just as important, that goes into that creation of the natural crystal. So when you're making a lab grown thing, it might not have that connectivity to the all source, that is grounded with the earth. So I don't know. I mean, that's just my kind of thought process on that.
Well, absolutely. The crystals store, not only do they amplify thought, but they store the energy. And you can clear a crystal with the intention, with the breath, and say like that, and then you rotate it around, get a different angle, and clear it out. And you can, we've been able to show this with water, we've been able to measure the effect. Or you can use a magnetic bulk eraser. It seems to work as well. It's just a little more practical just to use your intention to clear it out. But no, a crystal, the environment it's in, like water, will record the energies that are around there. Just like in everything records, all matter records some different degrees of permeability, like metal and crystals and things like that. They have a high degree of holding the energy. That's why people psychometrize and things with keys. Wood, plastic, and things like that, they have a low degree of permeability. That's why you can go into a room where there's been like something horrific happened, and you can feel the room, like the bad juju in a room. And so the walls hold the energy, and so you got to have somebody clear it out, with sage and crystals or magnetic erasers, whatever you do, to clear out that energy. I hear Melania Trump exercised the White House when she came in, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and when you're talking about all these objects that are holding all of this energy, just this image of Atlantis with all these magicians came to mind, where they imbibe different objects with the consciousness that they, their intentions and their emotions. So even in Egyptian hieroglyphs, you see them with staffs and with the ankh and all these other items. They have to be imbibed, most likely, with some sort of magical properties. And it makes sense when you think about, when they talk about the staff that I guess Moses had, and he would throw it down and it would become a snake, or all these other things that are possible with our own reality, once we truly know how to use it to benefit all, though, with love.
Well, we know that shape has resonance. So if you make one thing and you make it similar to something else, it's going to resonate too, because of similar shape. Think of the crystal skulls. Crystal skull in the shape of a human skull. Marcel believed that it was used by the high initiate to transfer his knowledge into initiate. that was coming into this knowledge, and it would be like a mechanism of a transfer mechanism to share this knowledge through the crystal skull. You know, it's interesting. You know, all these different things and cultures across the planet, over, you know, India, China, all over the world, you know, where they've used crystal in a specific ways. And crystal balls, you know, so everybody knows about a crystal ball and using it for scrying. You know, when I went up to I left my government job, I went with my brother to see the Hopi Indian chief friend of his, 107-year-old Hopi Indian chief. We had a UFO experience on the way up there. It was kind of interesting. We brought him some crystals and seashells and some Kentucky Fried Chicken. And somebody had stolen a cow while we were there. And they went to two medicine men. They kind of double checked, and they could use the crystal to scry and see who stole the cow. And they found out who stole the cow, and they went and got their cow. It's kind of interesting, you know, how the Native American Indians use crystals in this manner as well.
I think we need more of that knowledge to come to fruition today. Like, you know, what techniques are they using to scry for the cow? And because we could find out the truth of so many things, and then make people honest pretty much, you know, by having this very natural technology at our fingertips. So, I mean, that sounds amazing.
Think about the Ebens that came to Earth that you know, they had locked away in Los Alamos for a long time. They had a crystal that they used to communicate to planet Serpo, that was used as a communication device. Now, I'm sure in the secret space programs, they've, you know, they don't have cell phones and things like that. You know, and we have all these biologically dangerous electromagnetic communicating devices, you know, 5G and all this stuff, that we could have other communication technologies that replaces it, that work in harmony with nature. There's so many technologies that are being withheld from humanity that could work in harmony with nature rather than being toxic and polluting, like oil, nuclear, and coal. You know, it can completely be alleviated. They had the solution. It was because of the mainstream media has been infiltrated by the Nazi SS that set up the Bilderberg meetings, that, along with the other group, Council of Foreign Relations, the 6 corporations that control all the mainstream media, that the public did not get the message that these scientists that we had the solution. And in fact, after I was on CNN and all the networks, like everybody else, CBS wanted to do an interview with me. And I said, I'm not doing this, because I saw what CNN did with it. They made kind of like light of it, that we wanted to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs, which is not going to get the attention. I said, I only want to say one statement. I'm not willing to do this interview unless I could say we have the scientists willing to prove we have 0-point energy that would alleviate the need for nuclear, oil, and coal, that can prove before a congressional hearing. They promised up and down, interviewed me for 45 minutes. Afterward, the producer said, she said, I'm sorry, I never had this happen before. The higher executives made me cut that part out in a little 10-second statement. So, you know, the people who are in control of our media system is indeed the enemy of the people.
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, I worked for Hollywood for 11 years, and I just saw what it was doing to my own soul, you know, and what it does to other people. And it was very frustrating. So I'm very grateful to have had the experiences that I had and was able to do the things that I was able to do. But at the top of last year, I knew that it was time to follow my heart-based reality. And so that's what I did. And that's why I'm here today. So, you know, I'm very grateful for all of that. But Jesse has another question for you, Dan. Go ahead, Jesse.
Okay. I was wondering, Dan, are you still having contact experiences with other dimensional beings to this day?
You know, it's interesting. It's been crickets
Oh,
ever since. You know, I mean, yeah, I've seen some things, but nothing like 1977. It was like one thing after another. I was up in the mountains with a girlfriend off the beaten path, and there's this intelligence that was coming at night. We're way up on the mountains outside of San Diego, and it was so strong, the intelligence that was coming out of the sky. I had to reach my hand out and then said, you know, is somebody out there? You know, just like that, you know, just to see what would happen. And a star came down and started bobbing up and down and scintillating different colors, as if like saying yes. You know, and I had this elderly lady friend who had contact with a space being, and went with her up. I had some property outside the mountains, and she could see um, she could see them out, and she would draw pictures of what the craft looked like, and then she would take a photograph, and it was published in Omni magazine. There was no defect in the film that showed exactly the way she drew the picture. And as she was saying, oh, look, there's a whole string of them up there. It was a clear blue sky, and out of the clear blue sky, like a laser beam came and hit me. And she said, oh, they've contacted you. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, it's kind of, all this happened because of this meeting I had with this elderly lady, which goes into a long, crazy story. But in that year, it seemed that I had a whole bunch of ET related type of experiences. But you know, it's been very quiet since 1977.
well, they probably figured they had that was your jump start, and that was like to kick you off and get you going. And
I mean, how do I land up in this thing, being a top secret witness? I mean, I was with a girlfriend who's totally not into UFOs and everything, and she wants to go to Laughlin in 2000. And I heard Dr. Greer speak that he's going to go to Washington with all these witnesses, and I, you know, been following it for some time. That, you know, all these different people coming out, but nobody had the guts in order to, you know, go for the Washington and have these witnesses. And we happened to crash the cocktail party in the back, and they're having some wine, and I holding on some hors d'oeuvres, and Dr. Greer comes up and he said, oh, can I have one of those? And I say, oh, by the way, I had a top secret clearance, and I was in the military, in the Navy, and getting extraterrestrial, you know, and oh, we got to record you. So I was the 100th videotaped witness. And then what happened, I think I was replacing a fellow by the name of David Adair, who had an experience in Area 51 having to do with an extraterrestrial propulsion system. Probably was a little too much for I joined 20 witnesses. It was probably a bit too much, and so I filled in as a backup. And so, you know, just these interesting situations happen along your life. And you know, I do a talk show once in a while. I was just recently on Coast to Coast, and do a lot of different, you know, just because I feel that you know, I've just been given a little ticket in order to talk, because I did go to Washington to testify. And we have an infiltration within our government, and that's what brought about the meeting in the beginning, because the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff revealed these unacknowledged special access programs are reverse engineering the extraterrestrial technology. And Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson was denied access. And he told Dr. Greer, if you can get your people willing to testify under an oath, you have my permission to go before the mainstream media. This group is, quote, illegal. This was 1997. So in 2001, Dr. Greer had his life threatened not to go before. We were 20 witnesses that testified in front of the 22 cameras of the mainstream media. We were backed by over 500 military intelligence witnesses, but all of it was sanitized with what's called a limited hangout. They only hang out the part that's safe. They didn't want the public, and the first hour was jammed by the NSA. They didn't want the public to hear what these explosive, bases on the other side of the moon, 57 different species already categorized, nukes being shut down, what happened when we went to the moon, presidents, CIA directors are all being denied access. We have 0-point energy. We had faster than light craft built back in the 1950s. My dear friend and fellow witness, Mark McCandish, he was going to testify at the recent June Senate hearing. He was met with a shotgun blast to his head before going to that. And it was coincidence, highly suspicious, I would say, that just 1 week before that, Mike Tuber, who revealed that the Tic Tac that everybody knows about, the Nimitz incident that saturate the media with, right, is actually made by the Lockheed facility in California for the US Air Force Secret Space Program that can go 24,000 miles per hour and 500 miles per hour under the ocean. He came around, in 2019, he revealed all this, and he came out 1 week before they murdered my dear friend Mark McCandish, and said he made the whole story up, as though he got visited by somebody and said, you better come out and say you made the whole story up. And they visited Mark too, and Mark may not have gone along with it. So there's this, and what we disclosed 20 years ago was so explosive compared to what the UFO UAP that they just came out with on June 25th, saying it's aerial debris, unknown stuff, in the unclassified report, whereas they gave the classified version to the 18 different intelligence agencies that was mandated to be given. So, a lot of people were disappointed with what the government came out with disclosure back in June, all the way back in June.
Yeah, I know. I think that we're coming on the precipice, though, of total disclosure, because it's just going to come out. And truly, it's the ground troops, all of this grassroots efforts that's going to be doing all of the changes that are necessary. It's all about us and what we're doing now. Interconnecting together, having you as our guest speaker, talking about these things en masse. That's the change that we need to see. So we're all stepping up into our heart-based reality and our higher purpose of why we even came here in this moment in time. But there was a question in the chat. I wanted to back up through the chat because we did miss some people who had some questions.
I just want to say there's some things I can't talk about.
Yes.
Or else your video will get shut down. But I would like to share with everybody some information that if you go to thewebmatrix.net, let's see if I got a graphic of that. Yeah, here we go. If you go to this website, thewebmatrix.net, and then there's a link called Nazi Eugenics and Big Pharma. My great-grandfather was the president of the Homeopathic Medical Society. He was going up against Rockefeller medicine. And it's just some observations I've been making with leading scientists and doctors around the planet about what we're currently going through, which I can't talk about because of the extreme censorship. But I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Yes, I do remember traversing your, I don't know if it was your bio, something on your website, I believe, about your father, being the homeopath that he was. And it was pretty much thwarting the efforts of the pharmaceuticals, I guess, and their efforts that they're trying to do right now with the eugenics And yeah, they're going to try to eliminate us, but that's not going to happen. Unfortunately for them, there's too many of us and we're waking up really fast. So there was a question about the crystals. Are there any crystals that are helpful in meditation to ascend to a higher state of consciousness? By Karen. That's Karen's question. How can crystals help with your meditation?
Oh, well, you sit with your crystal and attune into it and realize that it's like a cosmic antenna, you could say, and use it to amplify your intuition, your questions you have for your higher self. Use it in that manner. It's a it's kind of the crystal is by itself, it's nothing. It can be used for good or it could be used for evil. It doesn't matter. It's universal. So it's all your intention.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that our entire being is an antenna, and it's receiving and sending galactic signals all the time. So really, crystal just only enhances or amplifies the intentions and thoughts that you may be having. So at least that's how I understand the way it works.
It's like having a little walkie-talkie, and then the crystal is like you have your big antenna outside and you hook it into your walkie-talkie. Now you have a lot bigger range. It's a what was I going to say? Anyway, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I tell people that it's basically just an amplifier. It will amplify your intentions. And, you can direct it to a specific point if you're pointing it at people. Because that's another thing, one of the lectures that Marcel was talking about, his experience with those witches who attacked him and left him breathless in one of his lectures. He said that he did a bad thing with the crystal that he had because he wanted to demonstrate the true power of a crystal, and he made the woman's chair levitate off the floor and crash back down to the floor. And he regretted it. He regretted it completely. So, that's very, very powerful, but we have to make sure that we use it in the correct manner.
Well, there's a difference between using it for good or evil. Evil being a distortion of that which is good. When you use a crystal in the sense of love with the highest intent, you're in alignment with the matrix, and so there's a much greater power there. Whereas as Obi-Wan said to Darth Vader, you're only a master of evil. You don't have. Sure, they can use these powers. They have, they know the occult. You can think about the secret societies that are tied in with all this. They understand, especially when you get up to the higher degree levels. You understand the interconnection of the hive mind and the consciousness, and Hollywood understands this really well. That it's only they use these principles in a way that serves their agenda, but it doesn't have the power that an intention with love has.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yes. No, I mean, you hear about the sound frequencies of the planets and of the earth, and the 432 hertz, and how these are all harmonic frequencies, and how they're trying to send out all these disharmonic frequencies with pretty much everything that's around us. If you just sit and think about all the things that are affecting our frequencies right now, you just get blown away. I mean, you think about the shoes with the rubber soles on the feet, and then you think about the colors and the fabrics. We wear synthetic fabrics, and really they're supposed to be more natural, and the colors have a frequency. So what are we doing to ourselves with the different color fields that we're constantly in? And, you know, and it just keeps going. Like there's this huge plethora of attack and assault on every level. Then you get into the Wi-Fi and into those, you know, the DARPA and everything else. So there's actually, you know, this great war, this unseen war on every level of our creation, because they want to stop this great awakening. That's really what this is all about. They don't want us to know, because I guess they have a chronovisor or some kind of information that's letting them know that their time is nigh, like they're done. And
What they're most afraid of is that we awaken to the power that each one of us has. That's their biggest fear. And what we're going to do today with the crystal and the visualization, I'm sure they're
not going to like
they
it.
would not approve of, you know. So yeah, they need to keep us ignorant, you know, with all of the distractions that they do, and that, you know, they have our history, our education, our media, our entertainment have all been heavily infiltrated in order to perpetuate that.
Yes, and I'm very well aware of all of it. I've been in this fast track of awakening for the past 10 years, and I tell you, I've traversed hundreds of hours of information, because something inside me is programmed to have all of this knowledge to be able to present it to more people. And that's why I came here. How I feel about it is that's why I manifested into this time period. We do have a question about, and I actually want to know this too. Is it important when you use a crystal, or, you know, Vogel or otherwise, is it important to clear that crystal before you use it on someone else? Is it holding the memory of the person that you use?
Yes, yes, you absolutely need to clear the crystal before you begin something new with it, because it'll retain that pattern of what, and when you're finished working, clear the crystal, you know, so it doesn't so it's clear and ready to use again. You know, I've heard different things of people using salt water, dancing naked in the moonlight, and different things, you know, to clear the crystals, you know. But, you know, in the laboratory, we found that, you know, pulsing the breath with intention or using a magnetic field, you know, you can erase the programming that is being held. Think of what I showed earlier about all the, you know, Pythagoras used to call a six-pointed star with a dot in the center the star of creation. That's way before, you know, the Israeli six-pointed star. And that is because the male and female triad, I guess that's not popular these days, you know, where you have the center point, which is the interaction of the opposites, is the point of creation. Just like the pineal gland between our left and right hemisphere is actually made up of liquid crystals, and it luminesces, and it's constantly changing. You can imagine the geometry that's going on in there, and it changes, you know, instantly. So where was I going with all that? Anyway, well, yeah, it's it's definitely it's the interaction of the positive and negative that are within the six-pointed lattice structure within the crystal. That's where I was going with it. That when it is sensitive to energies, especially when you pulse your breath. And the reason why Marcel used to say is that the breath, as we inhale and exhale, is more than just oxygenating our blood. It's connected with a multidimensional transfer of information. As we inhale and exhale, that information is written into the program. And so when you pulse your breath, you're affecting those charge centers, and that huge, you know, trillions of six-pointed stars with little charge centers are just modulated in such a way, as they were able to do at Stanford research institute with a crystal. They had a primitive image of the Mona Lisa. We were able to put it into the lattice structure and record it. But what the crystal records is in multi dimensions and in full, in full fidelity, I guess you could say, of whatever intention is put in there. And that program remains, and it continues to amplify until acted upon, just like water. Water, you can have a glass of water, you can structure it, and that structure will stay until you act upon it. You can say, glass of water, you're ugly, you're awful, you're terrible, and it changes the structuring of the water, and it will stay like that. And somebody could drink it and get sick, or you could put this loving energy in it, and it will stay that way until acted upon again. So the crystals and water both store patterns of energy, and until acted upon again is the program updated again. Crystals have a way of holding it in a solid structure, whereas water is, a liquid structure. So, but they're very, very similar in different ways.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And I also just wanted to quickly mention about what Marcel said about the etheric quality of smoke when working with the crystals, because this is very important. He said that the crystals would not work if there was someone smoking or if there was smoke anywhere nearby. It wouldn't hold the memory. What do you know about that?
You know what? I haven't heard that. I never heard about that one.
As I said, I went through pretty much all of his videos.
That's a new one. I don't know everything,
Yeah.
But I've, learned a lot, and a lot of indicators of understanding this incredible science that has been obviously lost, from ancient times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like it's up to us to bring this knowledge back, and to make it more mainstream, and to help people understand that their thoughts are creating their reality, that their suffering is being created by their own thoughts. And, it just amplifies and multiplies outwards. That's
what I loved about the work with Dr. Vogel, is he was bringing it into a scientific, measurable framework, so it's not so woo-woo, to a lot of people, crystals, it's like nothing to it. But he was able to quantify it and measure it. And so I created the marcelvogel.org website just to do a brain dump of what I experienced back then, and also that the hope that, new young minds would go into it and pick it up where it left off, and bring it into the next level of scientific awareness for the benefit of mankind.
Sign me up. I was going to ask you what happened to his lab and all of his equipment, because I mean, if I had my hands on some stuff like that, I'd be experimenting all the time, because that's just how I am. I want to learn stuff and prove it to other people.
Yeah, and the DeLaWarr Camera, I'm not sure where that went either. So it all seemed to disappear, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I guess somebody kind of absconded his technologies and all of his equipment and research over there, wherever his lab was.
Yeah, but with the DeLaWarr Camera, we understood the basic principles. Radionics is nothing more, the instrument of itself is nothing. It's nothing more than a tuning focus for the mind. Mm-hmm. When we talked about angular harmonic resonance, about the angles of water and quartz being able to share information because they're harmonically related. When you tune a radionic instrument, what are you doing? You're tuning a dial to a particular angle. And you could tune everything in the universe within a circle. You could tune it, but that's not fine-tuned enough. And so what they do in radionics, they break it into multiple dials. Dr. Abrams used to have like hundreds of dials. You would fine-tune it. And so basically, and it's an agreement. it's nothing more than a tuning focus for the mind, and the person who invents the instrument has the most influence because he knows exactly what the principle of the instrument is doing, and it works according to that principle. I had experience before, working with the government with an odd piece of equipment from England that the schematic was, everything in England's backwards from where we wrote, and it would not work no matter what I did, until I rewrote the whole schematic and visualized how every component was supposed to work. And now I said, oh, okay, now let's see how you not work. And then the thing started working. It's just like that type of thing. And I remember when I had a computer consulting business, there was this one computer that she would always have trouble with it. And this one fellow, this other technician I knew, every time he'd show up, the computer would work fine. And he went away and she was using it, and then she would constantly have trouble, right? And you know what he did? He took a Polaroid photo of himself and taped it on the inside of the computer case, and then it worked fine after that. This is having to do with, and it has to do with everything, our automobiles or any mechanical things. We interface with reality.
It sounds like I need to take a picture of my mechanic and stick it on the side of my car somewhere. But because I just keep having problems, but it loves him.
I was going to say that about you and your cars.
I know, right? I've been saying I need to get the gremlins out of it. So anyway, Dan, we have a question by one of my good friends, Dr. Sung Yang. Sung, would you please unmute your microphone?
Hi, I'm so happy to join this group and finally here tonight. And thank you so much for Dan, all the information. I'm just so excited and exhilarating this information. I mean, even though I knew, but you put it all in perspective. My question is that, have you heard any crystal or any advanced technology that assists the process of opening third eye?
That would assist the opening of
third eye faster, meditation or kundalini and things like that, because we are bombarded with that, that fluoride in the water just calcify the third eye. So many people still sleeping, not able to wake up, or, not getting clear connection is because of third eye been really not, tuning in. So have you heard any technology, advanced technology that assists that process for general public?
I have. There's different ones, and you can use crystal to help, amplify into your water, to change the structuring of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Breath with the crystal can probably help with opening of the kundalini. I had that one kundalini experience with that being that it felt like millions of volts going through my bottom of my feet and my hands. But I don't know anything specific, Dr. Yang.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking for some technology that I know it's coming. Yeah, according to Akashic record reading, it's coming. So I'm just looking for any chance I have. So I do QHHD just like Ellen, level 2 practitioner. And, my purpose is helping people to get into their true self, who they are, so that we can assist this process altogether beautifully.
Yeah, and Sung, have you tried to integrate any Kundalini yoga into your routine, your daily routine, or weekly or anything like that? Because I have to say that doing the pranayama breath work and the different motions that you do, and also earthing and sun gazing along with this in a collaborative effort, will start to let this energy, it opens up your energy channels, and it allows it to start to flow through you, and you'll start having lucid dreams, because this is what happened to me. So maybe it's that too.
personally, when I even close my eyes, start to breathing in and out and just meditative state, then I feel the jolts of energy shooting down through my spine that I cannot just calm because of the energy is so overwhelming. That has been my personal experience, but I am more thinking of the point of helping my client when I do QHHT, so that their third eye can be open a little more. And I'm looking to theta healing. So that's another thing that I am incorporating with right now at this point. But I know that there is a technology, advanced technology is coming, just like a med bed and everything else. And that will assist the process of opening third eye so that all, that experience can be very well assisted. And that's what I was looking for.
The crystal acts as kind of a regulator too, kind of a balancer, and if you, this thymus area right in here, Marcel, you say connect to all the body. So if you took a crystal and put it in this area, when you do your, as Ellen was saying, breath is extremely powerful. To breathe in and, do as you're intuitively guided, to open up your energy centers in the way that, would serve you best.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for the information.
Thanks, Son. Yeah, so we did have one question, and I was kind of curious about this. Can the crystals retain the Rife frequencies, the RIFE, Rife?
Well, I'm familiar with Rife. I built Rife generators back a long time ago. And Rife, discovered everything has its resonance, right? It's resonant frequency. And if you overload it like an opera singer on a glass, you'll shatter the glass. And that was the basic principle of the Rife technology, which he was able to see the live living cells with a special microscope that he made. I haven't heard the interfacing of crystals with that. That's pretty much just using electromagnetic frequencies that resonate with the molecular structures within our body. So no, I have not.
It would be an interesting experiment because I do have a spooky too. I have 4 of the cancer packs from a few years ago that I purchased. It'd be interesting to maybe use the spooky 2 in conjunction with the crystal somehow, and maybe figure out what that might have an effect on. That's the way my mind works. I'm like, what if we mix this with this, then what will the result be? So I have that kind of scientific experiment, childlike mind of experimenting with just about everything. But I just get fascinated by different thought processes. But it is approaching 8:30, Dan, and if you'd like to go ahead with the demonstration, if anybody else.
Yes, let's do that.
Too. We want to get to everybody's questions, but I know we'll probably be here all night long, So let's go ahead. I'm going to get my crystal. I have my crystal here. And I know that we need to discharge our crystal. And everybody, if you have a crystal, we're going to do this demonstration all together.
All right. If you have a crystal, take your crystal and take your fingers like this on the crystal. And, it could be natural crystal. It doesn't have to be a big one like this. Just for illustration. And with the intention of clearing out any programs that are previously in the crystal, pulse your breath with the intention to clear. Like that. And then rotate it on another axis just to get it from 2 angles. And clear. Okay, so we all have clear crystals. Now the power of imagination and the power of visualization. When you imagine something in your mind's eye, when you visualize something, you're actually creating that reality on a particular level, you could say. And so what we're going to do is we're going to interface between the reality of visualization in our mind's eye and put it out into the collective matrix and amplify that. This is an experiment, of course. Amplify that through our crystals. And what we do is get the full thought of the visualization clear in all of our minds. And then we will go like 1, 2, 3, and then we'll all pulse that reality in with our breath and then give thanks. And so I'm going to do a little imagination, okay, for our visualization. And I'm going to share screen with some text. And again, this is just an experiment, and I appreciate everyone participating in it. Okay, let's just imagine that there was once a plot against all of humanity on Earth. But before it was too late, humanity awoke to the nefarious plot and saw through the manipulation of their perceptions. Using the rule of law, the perpetrators were brought to justice so that their malevolent plans could never be carried out any further on the population of Earth. Antidotes were administered to all those that were injected with their poisonous depopulation injections to not contaminate the rest of the population. All of their control of information systems through big media and big tech were dismantled and replaced with information systems that informations and media that truly serve the best interests of humanity. The suppressed technologies of the secret space programs were released, which dramatically changed all of the toxic technologies on Earth to technologies that work in harmony with the laws of nature and the planet. Advanced healing centers are now set up across the planet that can heal all diseases and perform age reversal. Remote areas of the planet are now able to be colonized, as well as off-planet colonizations. No longer are there diseases and suffering from age deterioration, nor is there hunger, as the human race has discovered, as on other off-planet cultures, which we are now openly able to engage with, how our bodies can be regenerated for very long, healthy, productive lifespans, alleviating sickness and disease. The people of Earth, having learned a very hard lesson dealing over the centuries with this nefarious cabal, have united humanity to never allow such a poison to ever arise in humanity's future ever again. From this point forward, the human race evolved unimpeded in a realization of its full potential to create truly a heaven on earth. And so it is. And so that's the thought along that line. You can modify it to your own liking, but along those lines, let's all take 3 deep breaths. 1. 2. 3. And on this breath, hold it, keep that vision in mind and put it into your crystal and pulse it. And so it is, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everything. And with that, I don't know if anybody has any closing remarks or questions for Dan before we could close this session. I'm sure, Dan, we will have you on as a guest again because we need to talk more about the disclosure and other technologies that will be coming to the forefront. So again, we'll reach out to you and have another chat with you at some point in the future.
Yeah,
So
I would love to do that. There's so much to share on that in that area. I've been researching for well over 20 years into it.
Yeah, so we'd love to have updates and to, get that information out to as many people as possible. And with the help of this platform, that's a very viable resource for us to do so. So does anybody else have any more questions? I know that we didn't get through all the questions in the chat. It's very lengthy and it's very hard to go through 51 new messages that are there. So again, if you have any questions for Dan, we can certainly send an email to him with your questions, and we can, compile all of those. If you really want your questions answered, we can reach out to Dan, possibly through the email system or something like that, to connect with him and get some answers for you, because we're here to educate others for sure.
My email address is located, if you go to the webmatrix.net, that website, at the top, my email address is there, and I'm happy to answer anybody's questions and help fill in what little I know on this whole crazy situation on planet Earth.
You're just a great resource though, Dan. All your experiences are here to benefit mankind in their time of need. This is all part of the Great Awakening. Each one of us, again, is a key to the whole. So if we can just hold this thought in our mind and integrate it into our daily practice of forgiving others for their trespasses, and anything that might cause the discord in our own beings, for the time being anyway, to just traverse with love and to be reminded that the love is what's going to change the world.
That's right. Division has been created artificially, and we are each other's brothers and sisters, and that we all have various elements that have been, toward their agenda, been pitting us against each other, for a long time, when we're actually all of us in our heart all want the same good life that in the world that can be achieved. It's totally achievable.
It is, and abundance is actually everywhere for those who have eyes to see. And if you change your thoughts, you change your reality. So, what are you creating? What do you want to see in the world? Be the change you want to see, because this is true. There's no truer words than this. But with that, Dan Willis, I thank you tremendously for being here tonight with us and all of our members and special people. We've had all of our state coordinators, or some of them at least, come and join us in this evening. And so thank you very much for all of the guests that were here, our members who were the guests that were asking the questions as well. And for everyone who participated. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough, but I will be in touch very soon.
Thank you very much, Dan.
All right. Good meeting all of you. And I know we all put a good kick out into the matrix for the most benevolent outcome for everyone. And with love always.
Yes. And we need to do this as a practice too. This will be something that we integrate. Thank you so much. Good night.